Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now today on Outer Limitless, a company who is brand new to me. This here in my hands is a knife from the company Beavercraft. Now the people at Beavercraft reached out to me to see if I'd be interested in taking a look at their knives. I looked at their lineup and it looked like their knives were really cool for a number of reasons. This particular model we're going to look at today is the BSH3M. And you'll notice it does say Bushcraft knife made in Ukraine, a Ukrainian company reaching out to get a little bit of support, and I felt as though I wanted to check out their gear. So in today's video, what we're going to do, I'm going to literally get my first impressions as I bring this out into the field for some field use, gain my impressions there. Then we're going to come back into the studio. I'll show you this in detail, and we'll take it from there. And so with that said, I have a whole bunch to do and a whole bunch to share with you. And if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about what I'm about to get into, do me a favor, stay tuned. Now before we get too far, I would like to say thank you very much to the people at Beavercraft who did provide this for review. And so now as we get the Beavercraft BSH3 out for some field use. First off, you can see I am getting this mounted onto my belt, a very nice leather sheath. And what I found with the dangler, it's kind of nice to ride it in the front pocket for a little bit of a concealed carry. Now, at this point, you can see getting outside, one of the things that I absolutely have to be able to do with my field knives is process for a fire. Now, the first thing is with the Beavercraft BSH3, it is quite thin. So this was an interesting task to see if the knife would survive some batoning. Now, I didn't really have too much in the way of any concern. I'm not batoning anything terribly heavy. I'm not batoning anything terribly thick or stubborn. So this should not be a problem, but this is a nice test for a knife where you're testing the overall capabilities of the blade for the splitting capability, but also the edge retention and the general quality of the steel. And I can tell you without even getting any further, the Beavercraft BSH3 is awesome. It's a nice knife. This is a great knife for a beginner or for somebody advanced. It's a nice knife for a project knife. There are a number of reasons why the BSH3 would be a perfect addition to anybody's knife lineup. Now this has a little bit of a traditional design, which I like. It's kind of a modified Scandi grind and has a nice, comfortable, and ergonomic wooden handle made from walnut with brass pins and a brass lanyard tube. Very, very nicely done. Now Beavercraft does have a number of items in their overall lineup. Wood carving knives, spoon carving knives, chisels. They even have little axes, aprons, and different types of blades. Really cool. What you got? What'd you get there? Huh, Luna? You good girl? Oh, yeah, you like the stick? Yeah, of course you do. What are you eating? What are you eating? You chewing up on mulch? That's what you do best. You're a good girl. And so when it comes down to the Bushcraft knives, Beavercraft at this point having the BSH1, 2, and 3. The 3 for me really does capture my attention. I love the overall blade shape, I love the overall handle shape, and the general ergonomics that do come with it. Now the BSH1 is, I would also say, kind of a traditional style. It has a little less of a guard, has a little bit of a curved handle, and has pretty much a straight-backed blade, a little less in terms of the blade depth. The BSH2 is similar, just a little bit shorter, but the BSH3 here, fantastic. Made from a quality carbon steel, and generally speaking, this does have a blued finish, which really holds up nicely. Now you can see in the carving, this was a very stubborn piece of wood. This is a hard oak. It can be a little bit difficult for any knife. And you can see that, generally speaking, the BSH3 performing very well. Now, as I continue to work on the wood here, I'm trying to get all the different sizes I need to start my fire. So everything from my fuel through my kindling and my tinder, I have to process everything down. Now, I feel as though the edge geometry on the BSH3 could be improved just a little bit, in my opinion. It might be a little bit broad, and that's a little bit funny considering the fact that, first off, this is a very thin spine, a very thin stock, And then second of all, it is a Scandi grind, but in reality, the grind starts very low on the blade and then has a secondary bevel. So by the time you start the grind very low and then add that secondary angle, it can be just a little bit broad. So I feel like a little bit of reprofiling would go a long way, but overall, not a big deal. The handle comfort, very, very good on this knife. I feel like it indexes extremely well. It's comfortable to hold, and I worked at length without any significant hot spots. Generally speaking, it does index perfectly, and even though the handle slabs are a little bit square, not a big deal. It does index and feel very good with a full grip. And you can see as I continue to work down through the wood, no problem. So getting all my little pieces as I'm getting down through all of this, no problem, and doing a nice job with the carving tasks. Now again, I do have to say I like the blued finish, but you need to be just a little bit careful with a blued finish. Sometimes it can be toxic when you use it for food prep. That's just something to consider. However, I do think that it does a very nice job with overall corrosion resistance, and more than anything else, it's a smooth finish. So it's not like something where you have a traction coating that can bind up in the wood. The blued finish is very smooth and does a nice job as it carves down and through the wood. The other thing that Beavercraft did nicely, they did a wonderful job sharpening the spine. This absolutely does a phenomenal job getting fuzz for tinder. You can see here as I scrape, it is doing a nice job. And if you're not careful, it'll almost bite too deep. So using an alternate grip, holding the knife sideways, bearing on the side of the spine, it does do a nice job to get some fuzz and shavings to start my fire. Now transitioning here to fat wood. Fat wood's another great way to test a knife. It can be a little bit finicky at times. Certain knives, for some reason, just struggle with fat wood, but I found that the BSH3 did a nice job overall. It did have the capability to carve down and through to get some larger chunks of the fat wood. You can see here, just making it down and through this fat wood with ease. The secondary bevel doing a wonderful job, getting a good overall bite and really carving down with ease. Now, I did use a couple of alternate techniques to try to get some smaller pieces. Again, doing a nice job and really giving me the amount of material I need to start my fire. You can see here that I am typically using a full hammer grip. I did find that that is the most comfortable while using this knife, and you can definitely use your thumb over the top of the spine, but I found as though the edge was squared off all the way to the scales, which left it just a little bit sharp for your thumb, but again, not a big deal. Continuing to process down and through the fat wood, you can see getting some nice chunks, no problem. The Beavercraft BSH3 doing a nice job. Now, unfortunately, this fat wood is not the best. Fat wood is funny these days. You get some real good quality, authentic stuff and some other pieces that aren't just, I don't know what it is, if it's soaked in turpentine or something, but this particular fat wood I bought just seems to be a little bit inferior against some others, but at the same time, it is more than suitable to get my fire started. So again, as I continue to work here and process down, getting enough material to start my fire. Now again, the scraping capabilities of the Beavercraft BSH3, absolutely awesome. The initial sharpness on the spine was fantastic, and over prolonged use, it will round out over time, but again, the capability to really get some good quality fuzz, absolutely awesome, and even on the fat wood, extremely effective. And I do like to use the knives from time to time just to kind of manage my pile, get everything organized, so that when the time comes, I am ready to rip on that ferro rod and get the fire started. So here, as I finalize the overall preparations, you can see some last scrapings, last little pile, getting everything organized and ready to start my fire. You'll notice in the corner, I do have my fire lay all prepared, all ready to go. And now it's time to leverage this BSH3 with absolutely no problem. A single rip of that ferro rod, nicely starting the fire. Very easy, and enough length on the knife to help me manage the fire. So getting everything up to temperature here, just awesome. So all in all, I do have to say, I am very happy with the performance of the BSH3. Very simple test today, but my typical backyard testing, which I do enjoy. It gives me a bit of a benchmark against other knives, and I do have to say, this performed all in all very well. I like the knife, I like the comfort, I like the handle, the sheath is awesome. So to the people at Beavercraft, a very nice knife. I like the Beavercraft lineup, and this BSH3 is fantastic.
And so in today's video, going in a little bit of a different order, you've already seen the field use footage. Here I am going to actually unbox this. So pretty simple box, all things considered. This is going to be interesting. I am very curious to see how this performs, and I'm hoping that I've already found out that this knife performs very well. Now, the first thing I'm going to say as I'm unboxing this, when I saw this brand, it reminded me of a couple of different other brands. Like, for example, in the main one being actually, I believe it's Jeff White Bushcraft knives, which it really did strike a very similar resemblance. They use a lot of like curly birch and then like 1095 or 1075, something like that. And then the other company that it really did remind me of is Pathfinder Knife Shop. So when I saw this, I was like, huh, this is cool. Now you can see this box got a little bit beat up in transit, but not a big deal. The Beavercraft logo, Bushcraft knife, again, made in Ukraine. So here you can see, check out more Beavercraft tools. Guarantee if your product does not perform properly, please contact us at returns@beavercrafttools.com for a replacement. Again, I'm hoping I will have already found out that, well, this met my expectations, and I do expect that it will. As we remove it from the box here, this is beautiful. Really nice leather sheath. Take a look at that. That's gorgeous. Somewhat traditional in style, very nice, great shape overall. Nice stitching, beautiful. Nice snap, polished, and a dangler, so that's always cool. I love having the dangler in combination with the belt loop, so that is sweet. And as we take a look at the actual knife itself, buying myself some room. Again, this is the BSH3M. So very standard overall design, bushcraft style. Sort of maybe a walnut handle. I'll check that and annotate below. A brass pin. Here you have a brass lanyard hole. And it looks like everything, if I had to guess, is hand finished. I believe, if I am correct, this is a hand finished knife. This knife here is a carbon steel. Now, they don't necessarily specifically say what the steel is. If I had to guess, it's probably like a 1095 or something in that realm, but I really don't know. I'll take a look around their website and see if I can dig out those details. And again, I will annotate below. Overall, general features, you can see this has a total length of 9.64 inches. The blade length, 4.72 inches. The blade depth here is approximately 1.38 inches. The handle length, this is 4.92 inches. Again, a walnut handle, and then just that beautiful leather sheath. As we take a closer look at the sheath here, you'll notice that they do have their embossed logo. Pretty cool. Everything about this very nicely done. Now, taking a look at the grind, this is kind of a Scandi grind, but it's a modified Scandi. So you'll notice that it does not go to a zero grind all the way down to the edge. It does have a secondary bevel. Now that will do a couple of things. It'll actually carve a little more, I would say, standard for your typical user. So it might be a little bit more user-friendly for the general user. The other thing it's going to do is actually make the edge a little more durable, because a Scandi grind can definitely be prone to edge damage. In fact, I've damaged many of them. And when you take a look at the thickness of the spine, this is very thin. This is roughly 1/8 of an inch thick stock, so you don't want to be wailing on that edge. I think this will be more than suitable. And as I feel that spine, nice and sharp, it should do some good scraping and rip on a ferro rod. Generally speaking, the handle ergonomics, comfortable in the hand, feels very good. Nice indexing capability, fills out in my hand wonderfully. I have a large size hand. This fits just fine. So most users are going to find this generally comfortable. Interestingly is it does get thinner towards the pinky, which actually aids in comfort for this particular model. I think that works out very well. Thumb over the top of the spine, nice and comfortable. You'll notice it does kind of fall off the very end of the handle slabs there, but these are squared off and rounded in the right spots. So square, generally speaking, it's kind of a slab-sided handle scale, yet at the same time, you'll notice rounded on the corners and softened out, so that will work out very well. As I reverse grip and put my thumb over the top, my one suggestion would be this right here is going to be a little bit square for my liking. A little bit of sandpaper and kissing that over will go a long way, and that's the case for any of these kind of little subtle sharp spots. This could be totally rounded out in a mere matter of minutes and just aid in the overall long-term comfort. I do like stabbing down through my tinder and kindling to really make myself some smaller and finer pieces, so that's going to be instrumental in my ability to start a fire with this knife. Last but not least, a couple of additional details. You will notice that this does have a sharpening choil, so that's cool, the ability to get all the way back to that blade, and it looks like they've sharpened it very well. My initial impression, this should be very sharp. It feels like it right away, and you'll notice again that Beavercraft logo up tight against the handle. So all in all, a pretty nice package. I'm hoping this knife performed in the outdoors, but with that, let's wrap up my final thoughts. And so, all right, guys, there you have it, the field use with the Beavercraft BSH3. Generally speaking, pretty good performance. Now, I do need to say the wood that I was carving on was very hard. I mean, that was very hard wood. So it did give the knife a hard time, but at the same time, it did what it needed to. A few things. First off, with what they're calling a Scandi grind, of course, again, it does have that secondary bevel. So it's like a modified Scandi grind. The thickness, it is super thin. So that makes it generally very slicey, even though it's not a full Scandi grind and it has that micro bevel. But even with that, I think some edge reprofiling would go a long way. Now, generally speaking, I like this steel. 1064 is a relatively high carbon steel. It's going to be tough. It's going to be fairly easy to sharpen, field sharpen, I would say. But for me, I'd really tend to use a leather strop and a fine ceramic rod. Try to touch it up. If you chunk this edge, it's going to take a little bit of effort to get the edge back where it is pretty high on the Rockwell scale. And this does have a blued finish. Now, at this point, as you take a look at the knife, you can see overall this did hold up quite well. Now I'm going to clean this up just for the example, but I like that it has a blued finish. I think that's interesting. Now you do need to think about that just a little bit if you're going to use that for food. I know sometimes a blued finish does require chemicals and it's not the best to ingest that, but just something worth considering. And again, just real quick before I clean this up, taking a look at it, you can see the overall edge there on that secondary bevel. Did hold up very well, all things considered. No chips, no dings, no dents, no rolls, and even with some light batoning, no problem at all. The finish there held up pretty well, all things considered, and this is a cool little knife. Taking a quick look at the spine, again, you can see it did some scraping tasks, no problem, and that is very thin stock. It's thinner than 1/8 of an inch. I put calipers on it and I got 0.094 inches, a little bit less than 2.5 millimeters. And so now with the knife cleaned up, you can see how well that finish really did hold up. The blued finish, fantastic. It did a wonderful job withstanding like the abuse and scuffs, and it just looks great. So Beavercraft generally doing a very nice job with the finish. The overall execution on this knife, I think, was wonderfully done. It's a neat knife, very thin, but that is nice, and I do like it. I think this performed very well, all things considered. And so who do I think this knife is for? Well, bottom line is this is a great knife for anybody, and for a number of different reasons. First and foremost, you could certainly get this for a kid. The price point is wonderful, low price point, really in the $40 or below mark, which is awesome, at least at the time of this video. So very affordable. Next, I think this is something that just having it in your collection, if you had, a friend show up, or if you wanted to teach or train somebody how to try to use a knife, and for yourself, it's a great project knife. So even if you had other blades in your collection, or you were looking for something refreshing and you didn't want to break the bank, this would be an awesome place to go. For me, this is now a little bit of a project knife. I can tell you already what I'm going to do. I'm going to sand everything, just kiss the edges and soften everything out, and just put a little bit of time and effort into this. I'm going to reprofile that edge, get it nice and refined and tight. I'm going to resharpen the spine and get it nice and back to square. I'm going to take the leather, I'm going to treat it and just get it nice. I mean, it's supple to begin with, but just a nice deep treatment on there I think is going to go a long way. Some oil on the handles and just dress this thing up. So for me, this is a nice little project knife. I think it will be fun, and you do have the ability to just kind of play with it. So for short money, absolutely beautifully done. And so again, to the people at Beavercraft, thank you very much for providing this for review. And for the rest of you, if you like this content, do me a favor, take a look at my Outer Limitless 2 channel, which is more on the tactical and firearm side of things. At this point, that channel is growing quickly. I have a ton of videos up there, so if you like what you see here on Outer Limitless, do me a favor and check me out on Outer Limitless 2. So all right, guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.